My fears have come true. The Starks have made you theirs.
My blood is salt and iron.
Yet the Stark boy sends you to me like a trained raven, clutching his message.
I've lived with him, hunted with him, fought at his side. He thinks of me as a brother.
Theon stands in the dimly lit halls of his ancestral home, dressed in the meticulous finery of a mainland noble black velvet, silk gloves, and a delicate gold chain. He is a creature of warmth and luxury, standing in a tomb of flint and salt. This visual contrast forms the thesis of the scene. This is a profoundly failed homecoming. Theon expects a hero's welcome, believing he is a seasoned diplomat returning with a triumph. Instead, he walks blindly into an execution of his identity. To understand the brutality of this reunion, we must trace the political dominoes that brought Theon back to Pyke. 10 years prior, Balon Greyjoy's rebellion was crushed by Eddard Stark. Balon lost his 2 eldest sons, and his youngest, Theon, was taken to Winterfell as a hostage to ensure his obedience. Now, the War of the Five Kings has shattered the realm. With Ned Stark dead, Robb Stark, the new king in the north, desperately needs a navy. He dispatches Theon, whom he considers a brother, back home with a proposal, ally with the north, and Robb will grant Balon a crown. Theon arrives expecting a hero's welcome, believing he is the diplomatic bridge between two powers. But he is blind to the reality of his home. Balon hasn't spent the last decade missing his son. He has spent it stewing in the humiliation of his defeat. Seeing the north as undefended territory, Balon is already plotting his revenge. Theon's arrival is not a triumph, but a tragic collision. A son offering a peace treaty to a father preparing to invade the very home that raised him.
Father.
9 years, is it? They took a frightened boy. What have they given back?
A man. Your blood and your air.
Balon immediately rejects the familial warmth of the word father. He shifts the dynamic from a reunion to an inventory check. By characterizing the child Theon as a frightened boy, Balon is projecting his own historical shame onto his son. He directs its self-reproaches outwardly. It was Balon who surrendered and gave up his son to save his own life. Theon is not greeted as a returning hero, he is greeted as the living, breathing receipt of Balon's ultimate capitulation.
We shall see. Stark had you longer than I did.
Lord Stark is gone.
And how do you feel about that?
What's done is done. I've brought you a proposal from Robb Stark.
Balon probes Theon's psychological allegiance. By stating Stark had you longer, he is testing the depth of Theon's assimilation. Theon's dismissive, neutral answer is a diplomatic attempt to pivot to business. However, to a man steeped in the ironborn culture of perpetual grievance, this lack of visceral joy over the death of their enemy signals a terrifying reality. Theon does not share his father's thirst for blood. He possesses the sentimentality of the Green Lands.
Who gave you those clothes? Was it Ned Stark's pleasure to make you his daughter?
My clothes offend you, I will change them.
Applying theory of psychosocial development, Balon attacks Theon's identity markers. Clothing is not merely fabric, it functions as a symbol of cultural integration used to distinguish an in-grouper from an out-grouper. Theon's velvet and silk signal he is an out-grouper. Balon deliberately feminizes Theon to shame him, equating mainland luxury with a total loss of ironborn masculinity and martial prowess.
That bauble round your neck, did you pay the iron price for it or the gold? I asked a question. Did you pull it from the neck of a corpse you made, or did you buy it to match your fine clothes? Iron or gold?
Gold.
This exchange represents the ideological climax of the interaction. The old way of the Iron Islands is an absolute meritocracy of violence, demanding the iron price conquest. Paying the gold price trade in commerce is a taboo practice of the soft mainlanders. The necklace serves as the critical boundary marker distinguishing the ironborn conqueror from the assimilated victim. Theon's quiet admission that he paid gold is a confession of cultural alienation.
I'll not have my son dressed as a whore.
Balon escalates from verbal shame to physical violence, attacking the very symbol of Theon's assimilated identity. By violently ripping the jewelry from Theon's throat, he is literally and psychologically dismantling the Stark persona. Balon refuses to accept a hybrid identity. He demands total conformity to the fanatic, martial group norms of the Ironborn, enforcing the rule that you cannot be a Stark and a Greyjoy simultaneously.
My fears have come true. The Starks have made you theirs.
My blood is salt and iron.
Yet the Stark boy sends you to me like a trained raven, clutching his message.
The tragedy of their misaligned contexts comes into full view. Theon genuinely believes he is operating as a high-level diplomat, wielding influence over the Northern King. Balon shatters this illusion by reducing Theon's status to that of an animal, a trained raven. Balon recognizes that Theon does not represent House Greyjoy in Winterfell, he represents House Stark in Pyke.
I've lived with him, hunted with him, fought at his side. He thinks of me as a brother.
No, not here, not in my hearing. You will not name him brother. This son of the man who put your true brothers to the sword.
The concept of melancholia explains the venom in Balon's reaction. Unlike normal mourning, which eventually resolves, Balon is trapped in a pathological state where the ego cannot detach from the lost object of his dead sons, Roderick and Meryn. Balon's grief has calcified into a festering wound. Theon's attempt to claim Robb as a brother is perceived as a desecration of the dead. Balon hates Theon for surviving, because his survival required Balon's total defeat. As long as Theon stands before him, Balon cannot retreat into the narcissistic fantasy of his past glory.
I see. I destroy Robb Stark's enemies for him, and he will make me king of the Iron Islands once again.
I will lead the attack myself.
Balon identifies the political trap hidden within Robb's diplomatic gift. Receiving a gift in archaic societies establishes strict hierarchy and subordination to the donor. The giver is the magister superior, the receiver becomes the minister subservient. If Balon accepts the crown from Robb, he becomes Robb's client vassal. He recognizes the humiliating truth: what is given can be taken away.
How did you get past the guards?
Anything with a cock is easy to fool.
My dear.
Yara's entrance highlights Theon's total displacement within his own home. She is visually and behaviorally integrated into Pyke. She commands the space, easily bypasses security, and speaks with ironborn crudeness. Balon's sudden display of physical affection contrasts sharply with his physical violence toward Theon. This physical gesture confirms that Yara has entirely replaced Theon as the accepted in-grouper and true heir.
She can't lead an attack. You're a woman!
You're the one in skirts.
This isn't Winterfell, boy. She's commanded men. She's killed men. She knows who she is.
Balon actively dismantles Theon's mainland sexism. In the brutal meritocracy of the Iron Islands, competence completely overrides traditional gender roles. Balon validates Yara because she knows who she is. She possesses a stable, unshakable ironborn identity. He contrasts this with Theon, who Yara mocks as being in skirts, highlighting Theon's fractured identity and perceived softness.
No man gives me a crown. I pay the iron price. I will take my crown.
This is the physical and psychological point of no return. Balon drops the letter directly atop the necklace in the fire. By consigning these items to the flames, Balon uses the very heat and warmth Theon craved upon entering the room to destroy his adopted world. By burning the offer, Balon unequivocally rejects the gold price of diplomacy, declaring his intention to carve out his kingdom through force.
That is who I am. That is who we have always been.
Balon's exit leaves Theon trapped in a suffocating psychological double-bind. Every available choice now constitutes a treason. If Theon persists in defending the alliance, he confirms his father's accusation that the mainland made him soft, rendering him a traitor to his Greyjoy blood. But by staying silent, watching the letter burn, and failing to warn Winterfell of Balon's impending invasion, Theon becomes complicit in the betrayal of the man he called his brother. The fire has removed the middle ground, forcing him into a corner. As the scene concludes and the embers pop in the brazier, Theon Greyjoy stays in Pyke, but he has been entirely hollowed out. This sequence is the anatomy of a shattered identity. Theon came home expecting a father, but found only a judge entrenched in pathological grief. His fine clothes were mocked, his diplomatic gifts were recognized as poison, and his survival was framed as shame. The tragedy of the Nightlands is that it leaves Theon with nothing. By tearing away his mainland identity and burning his ties to House Stark, Balon creates a terrifying vacuum within his son. Desperate to fill this void, Theon will betray the family that raised him and commit atrocities in the north, all in a futile attempt to pay the iron price for a love that Balon Greyjoy will never sell.